August 23rd, 1942, the Luftwaffe appears over Stalingrad. In a single day, over 1,000 tons of bombs rain down, turning the city into a blazing ruin. Entire neighborhoods vanish. Tens of thousands are killed, and yet, in the smoke and rubble, the Red Army digs in. What was supposed to be a swift German victory becomes the start of the deadliest battle in history. Hitler's plan was simple: take Stalingrad, secure the Volga River, and cut the Soviet Union in two. But Stalin had already issued order number 227, not one step back. Retreat was forbidden. Every factory, every apartment block, every sewer tunnel would be defended to the last man. The German 6th Army under General Paulus pushes into the shattered city. They expect easy progress. Instead, they meet a nightmare. This is Rattenkrieg, rat war. Snipers nest in the shell of the grain elevator. Machine gunners wait behind the twisted beams of the Red October steelworks. Fighting is so close that grenades are tossed across hallways and bayonets clash in the dark. A single building can take days to capture, and often, the defenders take it back the next night. Winter comes early and the Volga freezes at its edges. Yet, across the river, under constant artillery fire, Soviet reinforcements arrive in small boats, clinging to life in the icy spray. Among them is Vasily Zaitsev, a young sniper who becomes a legend, killing over 200 enemy soldiers in a matter of weeks, his rifle echoing across the ruins. In November, the Soviets struck back. Operation Uranus, a massive counteroffensive, doesn't attack the city directly. Instead, Soviet armies sweep around its flanks, smashing through the Romanian and Italian divisions, guarding Paulus's sides. Within days, the Germans are surrounded, over 300,000 men trapped in a frozen hell. Hitler orders them to stand fast. The Luftwaffe promises resupply by air, but blizzards, Soviet anti-aircraft fire, and sheer distance make it impossible. Hunger gnaws at the trapped soldiers, frostbite blackens fingers and feet, ammunition runs dry, entire companies surrender without a shot fired. By January, the 6th Army is collapsing. Paulus radios Berlin, the troops have no strength left. On February 2nd, 1943, the survivors lay down their arms. The numbers are staggering, around 2.5 million combined casualties. Civilians starved in cellars, soldiers froze in the streets, and entire armies vanished in the snow. The Stalingrad was not just a Soviet victory. It was the moment the Eastern Front turned, the point where the unstoppable German war machine began its long, bloody retreat to Berlin. July 1st, 1916. At 7:30 a.m., a whistle blows along the Allied front in northern France. Tens of thousands of British soldiers climb out of their trenches, rifles in hand, and begin walking toward the German lines. Minutes later, the machine guns open up, and the Somme becomes one of the bloodiest days in British military history. The battle had been planned as the big breakthrough of World War I. For a week before the attack, British and French artillery pounded the German trenches with over 1.5 million shells. High command believed the bombardment would wipe out the defenders, allowing infantry to advance almost unopposed. But the shells were poorly made, many failed to explode, and the Germans had dug deep bunkers. When the shelling stopped, they simply emerged, set up their guns, and waited. On that first day alone, the British suffered nearly 60,000 casualties, more than 19,000 dead, yet the battle pressed on. For 141 days, the Somme became a churning slaughterhouse. The landscape was transformed into a wasteland of mud, shattered trees, and shell craters filled with stagnant water. Trenches collapsed under rain, bodies lay unburied between the lines, and any movement in daylight risked instant death from snipers or artillery. New weapons made their debut here. The tank rolled onto the battlefield for the first time in September. But these early models were slow, broke down easily, and often got stuck in the deep mud. Meanwhile, infantry attacks gained ground only a few hundred yards at a time, often lost again to German counterattacks the next day. By November, winter brought the fighting to an end. The Allies had advanced just 6 miles at the deepest point, at a cost of more than 1.2 million combined casualties. The British alone had lost over 400,000 men. The Somme didn't break the stalemate of the Western Front, but it bled the German army, forcing them to divert resources from Verdun and setting the stage for the war's later offensives. For the soldiers who fought there, the Somme was a nightmare etched into memory, a place where courage, tragedy, and futility collided in the mud of France. July 31st, 1917. The British launched their offensive in Flanders, Belgium, with one goal: capture the ridge near the small village of Passchendaele and push the Germans away from the vital channel ports. What follows is not just a battle, it's a drowning in mud. For weeks before the attack, Allied artillery hammered German positions with over 4 million shells. The plan was to break through the German lines quickly, but the timing couldn't have been worse. The heaviest rains in 30 years turned the low-lying battlefield into a swamp. Shellfire shattered the drainage systems, and soon the ground became a sucking, stinking mire. Soldiers sank waist-deep in mud. Horses and even tanks disappeared beneath the slime. In some places, stepping off a duckboard track meant vanishing forever, sucked under before your comrades could pull you free. The wounded often drowned where they fell, their cries fading into the relentless patter of rain and the thump of artillery. Despite this, the fighting ground on. Every advance was measured in yards, gained through waves of infantry, charging across waterlogged craters under machine gun fire. The Germans defended with well-placed pillboxes and artillery, hidden on higher ground, raining shells onto the advancing troops. Gas attacks, both chlorine and mustard, added to the misery, blistering skin and filling the already damp air with a choking fog. The Canadians were brought in for the final push in October. In some of the most brutal fighting of the war, they clawed their way through the mud, taking positions one by one. On November 10, 1917, the village of Passchendaele was finally captured. The entire offensive had gained barely 5 miles. The cost? Around 500,000 combined casualties. The battlefield was so devastated that even after the war, bones, helmets, and weapons continued to emerge from the mud for decades. Passchendaele became a symbol, not of victory, but of the horrific futility of trench warfare, where men fought and died not for cities or fortresses, but for a few ruined fields drowned in mud. February 19, 1945. The volcanic island of Iwo Jima, just 750 miles from Tokyo, becomes the focus of one of the fiercest battles of the Pacific War. For the United States, capturing it would provide a base for fighter escorts and emergency landings for B-29 bombers striking Japan. For the Japanese, it was to be defended to the last man. The island was small, just 8 square miles, but it had been transformed into a fortress. Under the command of General Tadamichi Kurobayashi, the Japanese had spent months carving an underground network of tunnels, bunkers, and artillery positions hidden from air and sea bombardment. Rather than meeting the Americans on the beaches, Kurobayashi planned to bleed them dry through a defense in depth. At 9 a.m., after days of naval and air bombardment, the first wave of U.S. Marines landed. Instead of open gunfire, they found an eerie silence. But as more troops and vehicles crowded the black volcanic sand, the hidden guns erupted. Mortars, artillery, and machine guns turned the beach into a killing zone. The fine ash-like sand slowed movement, making it nearly impossible to dig proper foxholes or get vehicles moving quickly. For days, the Marines advanced yard by yard, battling through fortified strongpoints like the Motoyama airfields. The most iconic objective was Mount Suribachi, a dormant volcano at the island's southern tip. After 4 days of brutal fighting, Marines reached the summit and raised the American flag, an image captured in one of the most famous photographs of World War II. But the battle was far from over. The Japanese fought on from their tunnels, launching deadly night attacks and refusing to surrender. Flamethrowers, grenades, and explosives became the only way to clear the underground positions. Every advance meant close quarters combat in pitch darkness, with the enemy often only a few feet away. After 36 days of fighting, Iwo Jima was declared secure on March 26, 1945. Of the 21,000 Japanese defenders, only about 200 were taken prisoner. The rest were killed. The Americans suffered nearly 26,000 casualties, including almost 7,000 dead. For a patch of rock barely visible on a map, the cost was staggering, but Iwo Jima became a crucial base for air operations and a lasting symbol of sacrifice in the Pacific War. April 16, 1945. The Red Army begins its final offensive of World War II in Europe. Their target, Berlin, the heart of Nazi Germany. After 4 years of brutal fighting, millions of Soviet troops now stand on the Oder River, just 50 miles from the German capital. The end is near, but the price will be immense. The Soviets launched their attack with the thunder of over 20,000 artillery pieces, the largest bombardment in history. The ground shakes as shells rain down on German positions. Leading the assault are Marshals Zhukov and Konev, commanding over 2.5 million men. Facing them is a desperate, battered force, remnants of the Wehrmacht, SS units, Hitler Youth, and old men of the Volkssturm militia. The Germans know Berlin cannot be saved, but Hitler orders every street, every bridge, every building to be defended. The city is transformed into a fortress of barricades, tank traps, and sniper nests. Fighting rages block by block. Soviet tanks are ambushed at point-blank range. Artillery duels erupt down avenues littered with rubble. Civilians are caught in the crossfire, many hiding in basements as the city burns above them. On April 20th, Hitler's 56th birthday, Soviet guns open fire on the city center. The bombardment is relentless. Meanwhile, Konev's forces push from the south, encircling the capital. By April 25th, Berlin is completely surrounded. The last German supply lines are cut and escape is impossible. Inside his bunker, beneath the Reich Chancellery, Hitler refuses to surrender. As Soviet troops close in, the fighting becomes hand-to-hand. Flamethrowers and explosives are used to clear buildings. The smell of smoke, cordite, and death hangs over the city. On April 30th, Hitler takes his own life. 2 days later, the Soviets storm the Reichstag, raising the red flag above its shattered dome, a symbol of final victory. On May 2nd, the remaining German defenders in Berlin surrender. The battle has lasted just over 2 weeks, but the cost is staggering. Around 1.2 million combined casualties, including soldiers and civilians. The fall of Berlin ends the war in Europe, but it is also the last devastating chapter in a conflict that claimed tens of millions of lives. A reminder that even in its final days, World War II's capacity for destruction knew no limits.